Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are here with Danielle from St Martha's Primary School and Gillian from Young Enterprise Scotland, along with my colleague Stacey from Money Advice Scotland. My name's Jenny from Money Advice Scotland as well. We'll allow everybody to introduce themselves properly in a wee second. The format of today's webinar is a conversation about the importance of financial education in schools, some of the success stories that we've experienced recently, as well as some of the barriers that we have experienced across the board to financial education provision in schools. A recent report from the Money and Pension Service found that only 48%, so less than half of UK's children and young people, have said to receive a meaningful financial education. And that's really why we're here today, because we are all extremely passionate about delivering financial wellbeing work and financial education in schools and also wider community groups in Scotland. We want to ensure that all young people have the most financial education that they can possibly get, so that by the time they come to that key transitional point when they're moving out of education and into further education or into the world of work, they've got a really good grounding of financial knowledge and financial well-being to fully equip them for adult life. Okay. Just to go around introductions now then, please. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your role within financial education. And we'll start with Gillian, if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for having me along to Jenny and Stacey. It's great to have the opportunity to come in and share the passion that I have for financial education. I am a project manager at Young Enterprise Scotland, and I lead on our financial education programme, Scotland's Financial Schools. So my role is predominantly to encourage the implementation of more financial education into schools, and we do that by offering teacher training programmes, CPD, we offer resources, lesson plans, teacher guides, etc. And we also offer money management workshops for senior phase pupils as well. Just very briefly, my background is actually in education. So before I joined Young Enterprise Scotland, I was a primary teacher across Glasgow. So I'm incredibly passionate about education and supporting our children and young people onto positive destinations. And I personally believe that one of the best ways that we can support our young people as they move through education and into the kind of adult world is to equip them with appropriate financial skills, and that will help them face any challenges that they're going to deal with. So yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Gillian. And Danielle, please.
Hi there, so my name is Danielle Reynolds and I'm a teacher in St Martha's Primary School in the northeast of Glasgow. And for the last couple of years, my responsibility has been to lead financial education within the school.
Lovely, thank you so much. Stacey?
Yeah, so my name's Stacey and I work within the Financial Wellbeing Project at Money Advice Scotland, and my job consists of delivering financial education to primary 3 to primary 7 pupils in schools all over Scotland. We do that virtually at the moment, and I also create downloadable resources for teachers and pupils.
Thank you, Stacey. My name's Jenny. I'm the Financial Wellbeing Manager here at Money Advice Scotland, and I lead our Financial Wellbeing Project. The Financial Wellbeing Project doesn't just focus on financial education provision within schools, we also do financial wellbeing work within the community, and we also train professionals about the meaning of financial wellbeing. And for us, financial wellbeing is something that everybody deserves to have. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how much resources you have. It's really about everybody having the right to have control and choice in their own financial life, to have a decent standard of living, and also to be treated with respect regardless of circumstances. So really what we want to do is take a very rights-based and very user-centred approach to financial wellbeing, and purely we see our role as providing people with information on personal finance that's accessible, it's empowering, and it's applicable to their own financial lives.
Okay, so I am going to ask this question to you all, and it is, what is your experience of financial education in schools? So will we hand over to Gillian first?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I can give you a little bit of kind of experience from my own time as being a teacher as well. I joined Young Enterprise Scotland 2 years ago, and up until then I had been a primary teacher across Glasgow. I'd have to admit that I've kind of seen limited financial education in schools, you know, from my own personal perspective. It was always an area that I found I'm really passionate about, but I did sort of struggle to kind of get that support and kind of know where to go for kind of help and guidance. And I think because it's not a core subject within the curriculum, so it doesn't quite sit. There's elements of it within maths, and then obviously with money, and then there's elements of it kind of throughout the curriculum, but it doesn't really sit as a core subject. So it very much relies on kind of individuals and schools to have that passion for it, to really drive it forward. And there's some amazing, fantastic organisations out there that can really, really support with that. You know, Money Advice Scotland, you know, we do it with the Young Enterprise Scotland. There's various other organisations that can also support. But I think, you know, those types of workshops should be a kind of consolidation of work that's already happening within schools. So it should be a kind of support for that. And I think sometimes what's maybe happening is because teachers have got so much on their plate and there's so much to do, you know, very, very busy timetables. And as I say, it's not always seen as a priority, that, you know, if we get workshops in and things, it can quite often be, right, that's fine. We've had that hour or half day workshop and that's kind of tick the box for financial education. So I think that, you know, what we want to see more of is having that kind of the workshops, but are kind of backing up work that's happening within the schools as well. And that's what we are really trying to do at Scotland's Financial Schools is provide teachers with that support and the training, because I think sometimes there's a bit of lack of confidence for some teachers of their own financial wellbeing and financial kind of capability. So that's potentially restricting some of the financial education that potentially could be happening. But there is a lot of fantastic work that is happening in schools, and I think that more is coming through. As I say, some of that is just from my own personal experience, and that was kind of the last sort of 12 years. But I would say in the last few years, particularly with the situation of the kind of cost of living crisis, I think we're starting to see more sort of work happening in schools and more kind of financial education kind of going on, and hopefully we can all kind of work together as organisations to support that as much as possible. So it's very much, I would say, a kind of a mixture. So you'll have some schools that are doing fantastic work and really driving it forward, and other schools that maybe aren't doing quite as much. And actually, as part of my CPD training that I do with teachers, I always ask them, you know, how confident did you feel with your financial capability or financial well-being when you left school? And it's always so interesting because it's always so inconsistent. You know, sometimes you can have some teachers saying, yeah, I felt great. There was loads of, you know, loads of support. Others going, really, I got absolutely nothing. And then some people saying, got a lot of support from home. Other people saying they didn't get anything. So I think that really highlights the inconsistency across the board, in that some schools, as I say, are doing a lot of fantastic work, and other schools maybe not quite so much. But I think a lot of that just comes from the fact that it's maybe not clear enough in the curriculum, and it's maybe seen as a wee bit of an add-on if teachers manage to get the time to do it. So I'd say loads of really great work happening, but definitely loads more to come as well.
That's great. Thank you very much, Gillian. And Danielle, if we come to you for the next part.
So I definitely agree a lot with a lot of the things that Gillian was saying there, just from my own experience. So my own remit within the school changed slightly a couple of years ago, and I was given more responsibility around numeracy and mathematics, and that provided a bit of a link with financial education. And I know that financial education is so much wider than that, and you know, we're trying to actually take the teaching away from just numeracy and mathematics and putting it across different areas of the curriculum. But it did allow for a bit of a link there. And at the time, my head teacher was quite keen for us to work towards becoming a centre of excellence in financial education. So the Centres of Excellence programme is run by Young Money UK, and we also worked really really closely with Young Enterprise Scotland as well. And my role within that was to be the school financial champion. So I had responsibilities of like leading staff towards, up-to-date financial education resources, carrying out CPD, and having like meetings quite regularly with our school deliveries manager, and just in general, just kind of keeping staff up to date with how we were getting on in the programme as well. And the purpose of the Centres of Excellence programme was to kind of try and embed a financial education programme in the school that would go across all the stages, and it would kind of provide children with high quality learning experiences that were, practical and relevant to the world around them, and also that would be sustainable. And I think that's a big part of it. To me, just as a teacher, I can definitely relate to what Gillian was saying about, you've already got so much to try and fit into your teaching day. There's a lot of pressure with that. So I think, just kind of taking it a wee bit at a time and thinking about what's going to be worthwhile and what are we going to be able to sustain there. So that was my kind of role throughout the programme. And eventually we did actually, we worked towards kind of achieving that status as a Centre of Excellence in Financial Education. But it was a long haul. It wasn't just a short-term thing. And I think it has to be quite a long-term thing in order for it to be kind of worthwhile and long-lasting.
That's fantastic, and I totally understand the different points you've been making, because I would say I'll take this from Money Advice Scotland's point of view. I've been delivering financial education in my role for over 7 years, in person and virtually, and I would say I'm seeing it more now that there's such a kind of appetite for the financial education. Like I say, I focus on the primary schools. And in the 2021-22 school term, I covered 102 schools. And that was like 472 classes looking for financial education. Now, fair enough, it's just a little bite-size part of it, but that was probably the highest amount of schools we'd looked at delivering to, and that's covering topics from introducing money, talking about physical and digital money, and other topics are like budgeting. One big one is like food shopping and thinking about that, because it is relevant to children. It's something they'll see more as well as household bills, banking, borrowing. In the presentations we deliver, I've got factual information, but it's got activities that have got real life scenarios in it for discussing money with children as well. So from kind of our project side of it, that's our experience of financial education in schools as well. But I have seen a big increase in schools looking for that now as well.
Absolutely, Stacey. And by the end of this financial year, we're actually looking at delivering financial education to 10,000 pupils across Scotland, which is definitely the biggest number that we've ever done. And we're finding that the demand across the board, not just in schools, but for all financial wellbeing work, is really, huge at the moment. It's definitely unprecedented in terms of what we've seen demand-wise for the last few years. If we look at it from the other side of things we do, Money Advice Scotland, we represent the free-to-client money advice sector. And we know from a few bits of research that we've been conducting with money advisors that the population generally at large, we're experiencing a huge shift in the demographic of people that are now struggling financially and that are needing to go along for some money and debt advice. And not only that, we're also experiencing a huge rise in case complexity as well. So not only are more people needing to go for advice because they're struggling financially, their actual financial situations are a lot more complex now than they used to be as well. So from us, from our point of view, financial education in schools is one of the things that we can potentially do in order to try and help people, to give them a wee bit of information and knowledge that will help to equip them, because we know that people's circumstances are getting really difficult and that people's budgets are really tight, particularly in the context of the cost of living crisis.
Okay, so our next question then is, why is financial education important? So Danielle, I'll come to you first this time for this question.
I think for me, I have to say that I think it's so important because I think it affects everybody, doesn't it? I think all of us deal with finance and money, even on a daily basis, no matter how big or small. So I think just the fact that it affects everyone, I think that's so important. And I think that's where, in schools there's a kind of responsibility to kind of try and teach children quite early on, you know, the importance of kind of managing your money and how to make informed decisions when it comes to managing money. And I think just like kind of reflecting back to like, if we even look at what's kind of been happening in our society over the last like few years, you know, like you've got COVID and the financial implications of that, like not even just for individuals, but for businesses as well. And then just now with the cost of living crisis, you know, these are things that children are aware of. And I think it's important that they get the chance to actually speak about these topics, and that they're given the correct information. And I have to say, like, even like as a teacher, you know, like I've increased my own knowledge over the last couple of years through like working with external agencies. So like yourself, Stacey, like I know that you were doing the financial education workshops in the school, and like through that I was able to learn about things I didn't know before, you know, like GoHenry and like children's bank accounts, and then obviously like Gillian, you did a bit of CPD as well with staff. And I think that's important because I suppose for us to kind of teach children the correct information, you know, we have to be kept up to date because things are changing all the time, you know, even like payment methods and things like that. And I suppose just from a personal point of view, I probably thought before kind of taking on the role of being responsible for financial education in the school, I was likely to think that, you know, like financial capability, well, a lot of that was to do, like, if you're good at saving, then you're really good with like your finances. And like, obviously that's a great thing, but it's so much wider than that. You know, it's like what you said about managing debt, like even like children knowing about like online scams and things, you know, because they're using technologies all the time. So they're coming across things like this, budgeting, etc. So I think that just because it's so relevant to society and what children are dealing with, it's really important that it is kind of like part of the learning in school, and that they're kind of given the correct information and skills to kind of help them make informed decisions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Danielle. We go over to Gillian.
Yeah, I would just echo everything there that Danielle said. You know, it's ultimately an essential skill for life learning and work, and you know that is part of the curriculum, that it's every teacher's responsibility, and you know to ensure that they're providing learning opportunities to develop these essential skills. So for me, it's just so important, and again, that's something that we really try to sort of stress when we're doing work with teachers. You know, looking at evidence, looking at research to show how vital it is. So, for example, the OECD in 2015, they kind of made the statement that financial literacy can make a crucial difference in the lives of people, in their opportunities, and in their success. And they talk about it being one of the foundation stones of well-being. And I just find that such a strong statement, you know, to suggest that if we don't have that in place, that is going to have a real direct impact on the quality of our lives. So that's always one that I share, you know, that idea of it saying it really is a kind of, it's one of the basics, it's one of the foundation stones, and that's why I've never really understood why it's not seen as more of a priority within education. And what Danielle was saying as well about trying to ensure that we're starting this as early as possible. So, for example, Money and Pension Service, they talk about financial behaviour. It starts to be established at the age of 3, which I think is a lot younger than people realise, and they're already quite established kind of habits and behaviours by the age of about 7 or 8. And it's suggested that parents and carers are the key influence in those behaviours. But obviously we can't always guarantee that, you know, the financial behaviours and habits that young people are seeing at home are the most positive ones. So, you know, if they're already starting to develop that, you know, by the age, once they start getting a wee bit older and getting more responsible for their finances, it becomes much more difficult to break some of those habits and some of those cycles. So, you know, we very much encourage starting from early years, you know, kind of nursery level, and looking at that prevention rather than cure, I suppose, as well, of trying to kind of get in there as early as possible. And that's, as I say, one of the reasons we think it's so important to have that financial education at that early stage. And then again, what Danielle was saying as well about trying to, you know, prevent kind of exploitation and fraud in terms of the kind of financial fraud and scams. And in fact, a recent survey, a lot of young people were actually saying that that was one of the areas that they wanted more information on, because they're very aware of the scams that are happening. It's always kind of on the news and on different programmes about how to recognise these different scams, and that is something that young people have spoken up and said, we need more information on this. And you know, a recent one as well that's come out is talking about kind of money mules, where, you know, young people they're basically being exploited and being asked to put money into their bank accounts, and then they move them out into other bank accounts, but they get to keep a percentage of the money. And it's kind of rife among students, and a lot of students are going, oh, this is great, a wee bit of free money. But obviously it's, you know, it's usually a form of money laundering. So a lot of real, you know, issues that young people have then faced. And I think one of the big things that we say as well is if young people just knew the consequences of their actions, then they probably wouldn't make some of those choices and decisions. And so it all really comes back to that kind of fundamental sort of understanding, knowing, you know, the best way or the best choices to make in terms of their financial situation. So yeah, I think that it's just so vital and so essential to life, learning and work.
That's great, Gillian, thank you. And just to pick up on what you said there, like you say, it's about them knowing, it's about having that information just so they can understand the different decisions they're making when it comes to money. Okay, and I have a hand over to Jenny.
Sure. So just on the financial education point, we know from a UK study that was done quite recently that up to half of UK adults find talking about money to be off limits. So we, as a kind of culture, as a society, we're very, very strange when it comes to actually having open and honest conversations about money. So if children and young people aren't receiving good financial education in school, then if they're going home and it's not being discussed, then they're going to end up leaving school, going into the big bad world of credit cards and finance and wages and all of those sorts of things with really very little financial information behind them. And speaking from my own personal experience, I knew from a very young age that money was a stress for my mum at home. So I knew not to bring it up and I knew not to ask about it. And that meant that when I was kind of making that transition into living independently and financial independence, I really didn't have a lot of financial knowledge to build on. So we kind of know that that's the case for a lot of people. And as Gillian says, you know, kids from as young as 3 are starting to develop ideas about money. It would be amazing if we could just start to really, really get kids engaged with financial education at as early an age as we possibly can. Thank you, Stace. Okay, so now for the nice bit. We would like to know success stories. What has worked well in your own experience or from experiences that you've heard about financial education? And if we can start with Danielle, please.
So I think that one of the things that worked well, or I suppose it was something that was actually really helpful when I think back to when we kind of started the Centres of Excellence programme. You know, like you're maybe kind of looking at something that's unfamiliar because we were the first school in Glasgow to kind of take part in the programme, and you're maybe looking at like paperwork or documents that you've got to kind of try and complete, and it can seem a wee bit overwhelming. But luckily, like throughout the process, we had Mary Leck was our education consultant, and that to me was just an invaluable help because she was able to make sure that I knew exactly what we had to be doing as a school and that we were kind of taking things in small and manageable chunks, and even down to things like she put me in touch with external agencies. So, you know, like Gillian then came in and done some CPD for the staff. We had My Bank, who were fantastic. They came in and they worked with some of our upper school classes as well. So I think that helped to it helped the school establish different links. And even just with regards to up-to-date resources, there's so many resources out there, but you know, you can go in and you look, and again, it can seem quite overwhelming because there's so many things and you're thinking, right, what do I pick? And she told us about the Young Money, the lessons for that, and the RBS, the Money Sense lessons, and we've now been using them in our school for a couple of years, and I think, you know, they touch upon so many different topics that you were saying that that everyone's already mentioned, you know, like budgeting, scams, like choices, and even things like needs and wants, and like the value of money as well, which is also like so important for children. And I think even just like another part of the lesson was talking about like feelings and money, like, you know, like putting in the link with like mental health and well-being as well, which I think is a big part of it. So I thought just having somebody there to kind of guide me through the process, I thought that was really helpful, and I think that helped us to then kind of go on and put a financial education programme in place in the school that would be like manageable for teachers, and that would last for quite a long time, you know, because obviously there's so many things that you can do, and you maybe put them in place and they can last a term or two. And there's opportunities like Money Week celebrations and things are fantastic, and it really lets the children showcase their work. But, you know, for financial education to kind of really be sustainable in the school, I think it has to be it has to be put in kind of small and manageable steps for everybody. So I think that was a big part of it.
Lovely, thank you so much. And Gillian, please.
Yeah, I mean, Danielle's given a fantastic overview there of the Centres of Excellence programme, and obviously that's something that it's run by Young Enterprise UK, but as Young Enterprise Scotland was there to support the delivery of the programme as well. And yeah, Danielle's absolutely right. You know, I think what's been so successful about that programme is that it was a whole school approach. Everybody was engaged, everybody was on board, and it has become more sustainable. And it's something that, you know, it's not just a kind of tick the box exercise. Like, we've had a little bit of financial education, well, that's it, done for the year. The Centres of Excellence programme is about fully embedding financial education into the ethos of the school, so it becomes part of, you know, the life of the school, and that's something that's just done within that school. And I think that St Martha's has been a fantastic example of that within Glasgow. We had Crosshouse Primary that was in South Lanarkshire. That was the first school in Scotland to receive the award for Centres of Excellence, and then we've got another school in Glasgow that's currently working towards it at the moment. So it is just about that kind of showcasing that amazing work as well, and that's something that we can do on our Scotland's Financial Schools website, and that's actually been a real level of success for our organisation. So the website launched back in September just of 2022, and we now have over 400 members signed up, able to access all of our resources. Everything is free on our website. We're fully funded, so it's all there, it's all completely free, and it's basically become a bit of a one-stop shop for everything that you might need for financial education. We've partnered up with other organisations like you know, yourselves at Money Advice Scotland, and other ones that Danielle mentioned there as well, like MyBank and Money Sense. And so we're able to then direct teachers to where these resources are, because as Danielle she hit the nail on the head there, sometimes there's almost too many resources that teachers get a bit overwhelmed with everything, and they're not quite sure where to start and what's kind of appropriate. So being that kind of support for schools, we find has been really, really successful. But just to kind of go back to the Centres of Excellence and all the great work that's been done at St Martha's, we're able to actually highlight that on our interesting practice section on our website as well. So we have quite a few case studies up at the moment of examples of work happening in St Martha's, and that's been really, really beneficial for other schools that might be looking to get involved in implementing financial education, but they're just not quite sure kind of where to go and what to do. So that just gives people a bit of inspiration, a wee bit of motivation to, you know, for some ideas that they might be able to use as well. And the final one that has been quite successful across Scotland is our Your Money Matters textbook. I don't know if people have heard of this before, but basically it was a textbook that was organised and kind of put together by Money and Pension Service and Young Enterprise, and it was endorsed by Martin Lewis. And it's basically the first financial education textbook that was available across the country. So it's every single school got 75 copies, and it's been really, really well received. So it's given a concrete resource for teachers, and it is directed more at secondary, but you know, primary teachers have also used it just for a bit of guidance. As Danielle was saying there, quite a lot of teachers are kind of they're getting involved in financial education, and then they're actually learning a lot themselves. And I'll say myself, like in the last 2 years, I've learned a huge amount in financial education, and this is my job. So, you know, there's always stuff to learn. There's always so much to learn out there. So yeah, we've been very fortunate that we've had a lot of really fantastic success stories. And as I say, we continue to highlight all of that on our website in the interesting practice section.
Thank you so much. And we have a wee note of the Scotland's Financial Schools website, which will be displayed at the end of this webinar. And we'll also, obviously, we're happy to share contact details if anybody's looking to get in touch about the Centres of Excellence programme as well. Stacey, do you have anything that you want to say about Money Advice Scotland's financial education success?
Yeah, of course. I would say for our project, something that has been really successful is changing the way we deliver from the in-person to virtual. By doing the sessions this way, we've been able to deliver financial education to far more pupils than would have been possible by doing it in person. So just even an example, this coming Monday, I'm delivering 3 sessions to 3 separate schools. One is in Orkney, one is in Dumfries and Galloway, and one is in Perth and Kinross. And I don't think I could stretch myself that far in person to reach all 3. So by doing it virtual, we're able to reach the smaller schools, and maybe some schools are only looking for 1 or 2 classes to participate as well. And I know virtual probably is not everybody's preference all the time with it. But I do think at the moment there is only really kind of one main person delivering it in the project. That kind of being myself. So I think it's letting more people get access to that resource by doing it virtual at the moment. So I would say that's what has worked really well for us.
Yeah, definitely. We've started to earn our Money Advice Scotland title, I would say, in the past couple of years, because before we really were limited about where we could go to because we had to obviously drive there. And now, because we are so streamlined now in our digital provision, then it means that we can speak to schools in Orkney, we can speak to schools in a lot more rural communities. Some primary schools only have 7 pupils in total, and we're able to actually now deliver financial education to them as well, which is really, really important for us, because obviously everybody deserves to have financial education in some ways. So regardless of where you are, if you're in Dumfries and Galloway or all the way up in Orkney, then it's been a real pleasure for us to say that we're able to deliver that service across the board. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you, Jenny.
Okay, so now the not so nice part. What has not worked so well? If we could start with Danielle again, please.
I'd probably say one of the biggest challenges goes back to what Gillian was saying earlier on. You know, financial education. Like I don't think any teacher would dispute how important it is. But I think there is, you know, there's that pressure, you know, within the curriculum, and you're trying to fit everything into your school day, into your week. And it's great having external agencies in as well, like working with the kids. But I suppose there's always the wee panic in the back of your mind, thinking, what about my maths lesson that I need to fit in today? What about my reading lesson? So I think probably from that side, just as Gillian was saying, it's not there as a core subject. So I think really like one of the ways that it can be quite successful is if you've got that kind of interdisciplinary approach with it. So I would probably say just the kind of pressure there of trying to kind of fit everything into the curriculum, that would be probably one of the hardest things about it.
Thank you. Gillian?
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that as well from what Danielle was saying. You know, that's quite a lot of feedback that we do get from teachers, and that they say we absolutely agree that it's so essential, but it's potentially not coming from the top down. Like it maybe needs to be more government led and saying that this is kind of what needs to happen. And obviously Danielle was a financial champion within her school, but maybe that's something that we need to be seeing kind of rolling across the board as well, that there's a dedicated person within each school that has that kind of, that's on their remit. And actually that kind of links into something that we've found quite challenging within Scotland's financial schools, is engaging more secondary teachers. So we've had a lot of engagement from primary, overwhelmingly fantastic engagement from primary, and our CPD sessions are always really well attended. And in early years, we're getting more coming through from early years because they're saying that they can start to see how vital it is. But we do struggle a little bit with engaging secondary teachers, and I think it's because there isn't a financial education subject. It's nobody's quite sure where financial education fits. And it's that idea of it's not just solely part of maths, and it's not just all part of business studies, and it's not, is it more health and well-being, or is it, skills based? Is it kind of life skills? So no one's quite sure. So I don't think it really sits on anybody's remit. And I think that sometimes can be a challenge because there's so much going on in secondary schools as well, and the challenges in secondary schools with exams and timetabling and all these types of things, that's not challenges that primary face. We can be a lot more flexible, and we've got a bit more autonomy in terms of how we deliver within the primary sector, but within secondary it is obviously still quite sort of subject based. So I think that's sometimes why we struggle there. And so that's something that we're actually actively trying to actually work more with a kind of a consultancy group and trying to work more with Education Scotland to see if there's something that we can do to try and engage the secondary teachers more. The ones that do come along to our CPD sessions are really fantastic, and again, as individuals, they're really wanting to sort of help, but we do tend to get people from maths and business studies, and it's trying to say, well, actually, let's try and get it out to everybody. Like it's a cross-curricular skill. It's not just that kind of sitting solely within those subject areas. So yeah, I'd say that's probably been our kind of biggest challenge. But we are working hard to try and kind of rectify that and try and make sure that what we're offering is as valuable to the secondary sector as well.
Thank you so much. Stacey, do you want to speak about our experience with secondary schools?
Yeah, with secondary schools, I would kind of echo what Gillian was saying regarding they don't know where it fits in particularly, so it is sometimes tricky to get partnerships with the secondary schools, where the primary schools, like you say, can kind of work in with that slightly easier. And thinking about, even when you're thinking about the math side of things, I would say probably that was one of the things that when we kind of learned from that, we kind of went in thinking maths at first. And then obviously in primary school and high school, people have all different abilities, and sometimes just seeing that maths element is quite stressful. And we don't know the abilities when we go in, because we are coming in as a kind of third party organisation into school, and we're not able to maybe adjust things quite right on the spot. So I think that's talking about it, is seeing where else it links in the curriculum, and just having that kind of topic of money talked about in the primary schools and the secondary schools, and kind of talking about just money in general, so not linking it straight to maths, but thinking about why we spend the way we do, why we save the way we do, and just trying to ensure people feel in control of their finances. But I would kind of echo that as secondary schools, like you say, they're not sure what class that fits into all the time. So as in obviously they have the other pressures of the exams and everything, so that can be quite difficult.
Thank you, Stacey.
So next up, we're thinking about, have you experienced any barriers in implementing financial education? I think we've touched quite a lot on this through the conversation as well, and I do think again with the secondary school, it is so crowded with all the other things they have to get done. I would say for both the pupils and the teachers, it can be really difficult for us to kind of work together to find the right time and place to fit these lessons in. So we have been trying to work on other options in the background and see how we can do this in the future. And that's potentially looking at offering recordings instead of having a set time where we go to them, just so that they can then access it when they have the time, when they have the availability, maybe when the stress of the exams pass and everything a little bit as well, and have that. But I would say that's probably, from our side, is the kind of barriers we face with financial education. Would you agree with that, Jenny?
Yeah, absolutely. It just always comes down to the same two issues, doesn't it? It's always time and resource.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, both are in very short supply in a lot of schools, but more particularly in secondary schools. Yeah.
I'll just ask then, Gillian, do you have anything you want to add on to this bit? Because I think we have talked about barriers and what's maybe not worked well as well. So just see if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, as you said, I think we probably kind of mentioned the main ones there. I think something else that has cropped up for us, you know, a couple of times just within some training, if we've done kind of whole school training, so it's not necessarily people that have chosen to come along, it's people that have kind of been advised to go or told to go by their leadership team. We have faced a few issues of people saying they don't know if financial education it belongs within schools, and it's almost saying, is this something that should be taught at home, and is this yet another area that the responsibility has been taken away from home and kind of given over to the schools, and you know, there is sometimes that level of you know, that they're just not quite sure if this is, or they just don't quite agree with whether it should be there, and that can be a much trickier one to tackle, because I think if you have people on board and they all understand it, but it's things like time and resources, if collectively as a staff you can try and kind of, you know, work these ones out, but if you've got somebody that doesn't agree with it, that's a much harder barrier to overcome. But I guess it's what we kind of mention as well within our training, and I think we've mentioned it already today, is, you know, it's about ensuring that people know that not every young person is going to get that support from home. You know, financial education has never really been a priority within schools, you know, for however many years. So, you know, we can't guarantee that parents and carers received any financial education themselves. So, you know, they may not be in the best position, and it's not a case that they don't want to help, it's just they maybe just don't have the knowledge themselves. So yeah, I think that's sometimes a barrier. It's not happened a lot of times, you know, most of the time teachers are very on board with it and see the value, but we have had that a couple of times of people being quite reluctant to actually see a place for it in schools.
Yeah, and I completely understand where kind of everyone's coming from that. Like Jenny said, like when we were younger, it was definitely not something that was spoke about at home, and I still think people are quite reluctant to speak to children about it because they see it as something the adults are dealing with. So it's just being open to talk about it, but like you say, they might not know how to speak about it or to what degree to speak about it as well. But it was nothing that was spoke about when I was younger in school or at home. So it's more having those conversations, I would say. Danielle, is there anything you want to add regarding kind of barriers when it's coming to?
I think even just what you were talking about there, like obviously kind of getting across that the main drivers of financial education and why it's so important that children kind of do get that correct information, because of course, like obviously, like for parents and like they'll want to educate children as well, but everybody's circumstances are completely different. And I think, you know, like as I said before, like things are changing all the time. You know, like so many things are cashless. You know, you can go on the bus. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to use cash for that. You just think of how everything's done through technology now as well. So I do just think it's important that obviously practitioners are kept up to date, just so that we are kind of giving children the correct information, and that it's up to date and relevant for them as well. And I'd probably say, like thinking back to when we started with the programme, one of the barriers that we actually faced at the time was it was in the midst of COVID. So like we really like we weren't like in any kind of normality. And obviously at that point as well, like financial education was so relevant because COVID had, as I said before, had so many financial implications for individuals, for businesses. So I think COVID actually did have an impact on how we could really kind of embed any kind of new financial education programme in the school. And, you know, like maybe getting like external visitors in, like even like from the business sector, you couldn't do any of that at the time because obviously, you know, we weren't even getting to have like enterprise events like our Christmas fair that we would usually have. And parents weren't really in the building either, never mind, you know, kind of getting outside agencies in. You know, the kids were working in bubbles, we had remote learning. So that was obviously a big barrier for us at the time. But I suppose one of the kind of good things to come out of that is like that time was, like, you know what you're saying, Stacey, about the like delivering the financial education workshops virtually. You know, it really kind of like people had to really kind of think creatively about how they were going to like deliver financial education. So I think although that was a barrier, that there was ways of overcoming it. And, we've now had you kind of delivering those workshops to the school for 2 years. So even though that came in the midst of COVID, it's actually something that we've been able to sustain for the couple of years following that. And I would also say it did take us, also because of COVID, kind of longer than what we thought to work towards finishing that programme. But in hindsight, one of the good things about it was, I suppose, what we had put in place, we were able to kind of do a wee bit at a time and reflect back on, right, what have we put in so far and what's been working well and what do we need to kind of modify a wee bit going forward.
No, that's really great. Thanks, Danielle. And I would say, like you say, with everything we had to deal with during COVID, it was about, for us, getting a bit creative with how we deliver it. But I would say it's offered us an opportunity to have more topics available, more variety for that, because as Jenny said previously, we would drive to somewhere, take all our resources with us, just in a mini suitcase that I trailed around many a school. But then you had to kind of have a set amount of what you could deliver at that point, because it wasn't just being able to kind of bring that information together on a screen. So there was only very, very limited things you could possibly do at that time. I think it's given us more opportunity.
Yeah. Stacey and I used to cause havoc on the roads when we were driving to primary schools in the morning.
We did, always hitting it when all the parents were doing the drop-off as well. So parking was always a delightful experience. Yeah. So next up is, what would you like to see change in the future regarding financial education? So Danielle, I'll come to yourself first.
I suppose we've already kind of spoken about it a wee bit in the way that, just financial education just being viewed as a kind of priority subject within the curriculum. And it isn't there as its own core subject, but I suppose just kind of having, looking at it from that interdisciplinary context, not just looking at it from numeracy and mathematics, which obviously there's lots of links within numeracy and mathematics, but it is a lot wider than that. It's, it's health and well-being, it's technologies, it links into so many areas across the curriculum. And I think, one of the ways to kind of make it successful going forward, I think has to be kind of looking at it from that interdisciplinary context, especially when it's not there as a core subject.
That's great. Yeah, I agree with that. I would say it is something we're looking at, a bit of an across the board approach to it. My experience is I find schools all work very differently, and how they implement financial education. So some classes I've spoken to have never spoken about money in general, while other ones use their class point-based system on a money side of it, and they have to purchase classroom items and pay rent on their desk and understand it. I have one teacher who was charging them interest if they needed to borrow money, so they have that understanding. So I'm speaking to some classes who are really experienced with it, and I'm speaking to some classes who have no experience, because it is down to what you've both been saying as well about the teachers' confidence in speaking about it and how they feel. From going in person, one thing I noticed is some teachers would as well bring out their debit cards and credit cards and show the pupils and everything, while others were kind of letting us take the full lead on it because they weren't sure how to have that discussion. So it helped in both ways. But I do think an across the board approach to it, Gillian, I think you were saying coming as part of the curriculum interdisciplinary from the government, because when I've looked at the curriculum, I do think it ties in mostly with maths when you look at the points of it, money. So I think it'd be good to have it in the different ways. Gillian, what would you like to add to this one?
Yeah, again, just kind of echoing everything that you've said there. I would love to see it more prioritised in schools. It's, as I said, it's such an essential skill for life learning and work, and I've never understood why it's not more kind of integrated into the curriculum. But yeah, it's viewing it as beyond just numeracy and maths. But you're absolutely right, there are loads of links there, and a basic numeracy understanding to be able to calculate money and work with money is absolutely essential. So it's certainly not trying to take it away from that, but it's just trying to see that actually to be able to cover all of these elements of financial education and financial well-being, we need to look at it on that kind of wider scale. And one way of doing that, which does then also help with workload and timetabling, etc., is to incorporate it into interdisciplinary learning. And it then usually involves a more real life context as well, and allows young people to kind of take the lead on the learning, to drive forward change, these types of things. So that's something that I would love to see. I'd also really like to see it officially part of the sort of teacher training programme and kind of newly qualified teacher kind of training as well. I feel very passionate about that. We go out and we do work with student teachers, and they always talk, they're always so enthusiastic, they're always so motivated, they're new into it, so they really see the value. So I think if we can really target newer teacher, early career teachers, and get them into that mindset of embedding more financial skills, I think that could be a really useful way forward. And again, as you were saying, that kind of top-down approach, coming from government level and having financial champions, or having every school having a dedicated person. That was actually one of the issues that we faced with the textbooks, that the textbooks were all sent to schools, and for a lot of them, they maybe just went into the school office and they didn't go to a dedicated person. Whereas over in Northern Ireland, they have a financial capability officer in all of their schools. So the textbooks went directly to that person, and they were then responsible for handing them out. So that was something that, part of the evaluation of the textbook, that was something that came up. So I just think that if we had somebody like that, and that was part of someone's remit to sort of take the lead on financial education and financial wellbeing, I think we would probably see a big change and a big drive forward.
That's great. Thank you very much, Gillian. Jenny, is there anything you want to add?
I guess just more of it. Just to kind of, again, echo what Danielle and Gillian have said, but also if we look at the challenge that we face as a society in terms of the stigma that we still experience when it comes to financial difficulty and debt and speaking about money, it would be really nice if we could use financial education to try and help to tackle the stigma. Also, I'm aware that schools are often the heart of a community. The school community is a really, really important aspect of people's lives. We're not just talking about the children, we're also talking about parents and carers and adults. And I think it would be really nice if schools did have a place in thinking about financial education and how they can promote that in a more community setting, as well as educating the children alone.
That's great. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, and our last question for today is, do you feel there is more to be done to improve financial education across the board? And I feel like we have touched on this quite a lot already, but I would like to hand the question over just to see what you think. So Gillian, if we come to yourself first.
Yeah, firstly, I think it needs to be made clear that there is fantastic work that is currently happening in schools, some great work that's going on, in individual schools, in learning communities, and from external organisations as well to help support this. So there is amazing work happening, but I guess there's always room for improvement, isn't there? There's always space to do a wee bit more. And I think one of the things that I would say is really trying to get the word out there, and to have teachers see what's available, so that they're not having to start from scratch. A couple of teachers that we spoke to before we kind of started our project, we asked them, what do you think about financial education? How do you feel about it? And they're like, yeah, it's so essential, but we have no idea where to start. And it's almost like from the outside looking in, the enormity of the task. And I think that's what Danielle touched on as well, about trying to do things in small chunks and not sort of expecting to kind of be a financial school by the end of the term. This is something that's going to take time to embed in terms of training, upskilling teachers, building confidence, building partnerships with, as Jenny was saying, the community. There's lots that people can learn from, maybe local entrepreneurs, people that could come in and talk about, their experiences and things like that as well. So there's always areas for improvement, but I think that we need to be quite pleased as well with a lot of the work that is being done, because it is absolutely fantastic.
That's great, Gillian. Thank you. And hand over to Danielle.
Yeah, very, very similar to what Gillian was saying there. I would say, across the board, there's so many people that are doing a great job with financial education. And I would say that obviously like today, it's been a good opportunity to actually, you know, like hear what other people do and what their role is. I think it's been a good chance to kind of network and collaborate. And I suppose there's that kind of idea of, you know, supporting one another and kind of promoting what other people are doing as well. Like, because like part of the criteria that we had for the programme was, you know, if we were working with external agencies, we had to make that known, like on our school social media and on our website. So we actually had like a section on the school website, you know, about the different organisations we'd worked with. So like My Bank, Young Enterprise Scotland, Money Advice Scotland. And we actually started like a financial newsletter for the parents. And I suppose like without us putting that out there, how do people know who we're working with and what their job is and how they've helped the children develop their financial education? So I suppose it's all about the kind of the promotion of not just what your own role is, but what other people are doing as well. And obviously, like I've been on like a training that Gillian had put in a Gillian had did an input that I attended, and she spoke a lot about Scotland's financial schools. And there's a couple of our case studies. A couple of the classes did for Enterprise last year. It was the DIY Fiver Challenge. So our case studies are on there, and I've been able to kind of share that with staff. But obviously, if I'm directing them to the website, I can also say, oh, well, when you're on there, there's also like grab and go lessons that you can look at as well. So I think it's just the promotion of what everybody's doing, and just kind of raising awareness generally.
That's great, Danielle. Thank you very much. And Jenny?
Really just you know, there is a lot that's been done in the world of financial education. Gillian and I both sit on the Scottish Forum for Financial Education, and there's so many amazing organisations as well as schools are doing a lot of great work. I think we need a big conference to pull everybody together and to allow people from the education sector to actually have a bit of networking and experience, you know, what is out there and what's on offer, because I think that sometimes we are our own best kept secret when it comes to, you know, what we actually have to offer. And it would be really great if we could, just help schools to understand what support's out there for them.
Definitely. Well, that is us at an end. Jenny, I'll let you finish up for us.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you again to Gillian and Danielle for joining us this afternoon. We hope that you enjoyed it and you didn't feel that we were grilling you too much. The information about Scotland's financial schools and Money Advice Scotland is on the slide there. We will also put up some information accompanying this webinar with all of the other information as well, so people know how to contact you if they're looking to find out more about what you're doing. But otherwise, thank you again. It's been really, really great to chat to you, and we hope that we see you again soon.